want to wish everyone a good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. Um, to be transparent, I'm still adjusting to our time difference. I let Lynn know I may be a little late this morning. I just couldn't get out of bed. But the topic is compelling, and I wanted to be here, first of all, to say hello and welcome, but also trust. And just to say that I had an incident last week with some people where I thought I was in a situation of trust. It was a reading group and we were all doing our check-in. And when I did my check-in, all of a sudden somebody responded to what I said in a negative way. And I always thought there was a shared understanding that we don't cross-talk during check-ins, that that's our private time. But I know in this group, we have that shared understanding, but I guess it's not always understood. So anyway, so I am interested and curious about today, and here we are.
Yeah, well, you're sort of starting us with this very human experience. Steve calls it the ouch. Steve Moskowitz, who may be here this morning, that when we're trusting something, and then it doesn't happen the way we're trusting it, it's that sort of sting. And all of us have experienced in our lives many stings that way of trusting and then having the counter of what we're trusting actually happen. So I'll start also with myself. I'm part of a team that's doing a very, very important work. And I realized that the success of this team, everything depends on our building trust and coordination between us. And it feels so important to me, this issue of trust. And so I thought to myself, well, what is trust? You know, focusing helps me to ask that question, not to just worry about the mystery of how we get it, but to actually ask into it. What do I want that word trust to mean? And one of the things that I do trust is you. I trust this community to help me to think further about it, to feel into it, to explore it with me. And so I thought, well, it isn't only my personal need for trust at this time and to understand trust, but it's also something that we so need in the world right now. It's something that that's sort of like a roller coaster in the world. We trust, we don't trust. Who do we trust? How do we trust? Where do we get this this trust? And so we're going to explore that all today together, and see what we can come up with, see what we can learn from each other about it. So trust. One thing that I've learned about trust is that it's not a thing. I can't just order it on Amazon. I wish I could, you know, just just pick it out and say, yes, I'll have 2 gallons of trust and have it delivered by this afternoon. We need it right now. Wouldn't that be great? But trust isn't a thing, right? And focusing helps me to understand that, because Jean's philosophy is so much about de-thingifying, understanding that we don't really live in a world of things. Trust is very much a relational concept. It's a dynamic. It's something between us And that makes it even more complex and mysterious. It's something between us, and it's something that I can build. And there's a funny paradox in that about this and about many things, that I can't change the other person or the other people, but I can change the dynamic. It's a quite mysterious, complex thing. You know, many times I hear people say, you know, how can I trust him? How can I trust them? They aren't trustable, as if the trust was all about how the other person is or who the other person is. And I think that leaves us helpless. And I think that focusing gives us another way of looking at it. And I'm hoping that we'll explore that other way of looking at it. So for a moment, let's just take a breath and see, just right originally, what comes to you in terms of what trust is. Maybe another word, maybe an analogy, maybe an image. What comes to you right away about what trust is? If somebody from Mars was saying, you people talk about this thing called trust on your planet. What is that?
In the bloom that comes around once a year. So trust is time. Time expanding, or time in a point of a flower.
Trust is time expanding or in a point. Anybody else?
It's got to do with peace of mind.
It has to do with peace of mind, yes.
I'm not worrying about what the other person is going to do because I trust them.
Yes, you don't have to worry about what they're going to do. Yes.
I was going to say that I have to feel safe when I trust somebody else.
Mm-hmm. It's about feeling safe with someone.
Includes the body
It includes the body feeling
feeling safe.
Yeah. It's definitely a body feeling. It's a sensory experience of trust.
I think there's also something about that if there's an other, then it's something about that they will be or behave in a way that you know about them, that they're not going to do something very different.
Yes,
Or
Leslie,
you can trust them always to do something different, but there's a sense of reliability in that person, which you have to know a person. Or
yes.
with your body, you might decide that is.
Yes. Very good point, that it has so much to do with knowing another person and knowing how they are organized as a human, and having confidence in the reliability of that knowing. And I think that's true for a group too, knowing a group. And it's true too about trusting yourself, right? That you have to really know yourself. One of the things about trust is that we think of it as this package. I trust this person. I don't trust this person. I trust the group. I don't trust the group. And trust is so particular. I trust this person this way, and I don't trust them that way. I trust the group this way, I don't trust the group that way. It's very intricate and very particular.
And
And
for
we-
me, and for me, it's trusting in myself that I'll be okay no matter what.
Absolutely trusting in yourself that you'll be okay no matter what. Yeah. And maybe also it's trusting in life.
Hmm.
Trusting in life that there is more life, that life wants more life, as Jean puts it. That there is this forward movement, this developmental thrust, this life force in all of us. I have a friend named Doris Brothers who wrote a book about trust. And the book is called Falling Backwards. And this was a kind of more early psychoanalytic book that has a lot of sort of self-psychological language in it about self-object experience. But I'll translate the kernel of this book because I read it so many years ago and it always stayed with me. Self-object experience in self-psychology is about our basic needs, to be understood, to be appreciated, to be on the same wavelength with other people, to be connected. And Doris said that trust has 4 different strands. That we trust the other person or the other people to meet our needs, that we trust ourselves to meet their needs, that we trust ourselves to meet our own needs, that we can trust ourselves to be okay. And the 4th one, and that one Julie brought in, the 4th one that is interesting, that was sort of new for me, is trusting the other or the others that they can meet their own needs. That if we aren't vigilant and right there every second and maybe sacrificing ourselves, that the other will be okay, that they'll be able to meet their own needs. Maybe not by themselves, but resourcefully. So Doris's idea was that when one of these strands of trust is broken in childhood, when there's a traumatic lack of trust, that then we tend to rely on the others, or maybe all 3 might be traumatically disappointed. So I can't trust for example, I can't trust my family to meet my needs. I can't trust my family to meet their own needs. I can't trust myself to meet their needs. Then I have to put all of that into trusting myself to meet my needs. So you can sort of just get the picture there. Maybe if I can't trust myself, I've learned that I shouldn't trust myself, and I can't trust the other. I trust the other to meet their needs, and then I don't get my needs met or something. But let's just take in that little sort of diagram that she's drawing for us about these strands of trust and how we can overdevelop one strand or 2 strands, and then the other 2 might be underdeveloped. We're sort of compensating. One thing we can say about that is that I think we all know is that trauma, and I'm using the word trauma here as something that is overwhelming our system, and the environment is not meeting our basic needs, that in trauma, people can have a lack of trust, a lack of that peace of mind, a lack of that sense of confidence, a lack of that sense of the reliability of connectivity, the lack of a sense of belief in the others, in the other, in the self, in the world. Or sometimes it can go the other way, and have trust that is trust in the wrong thing, that even though you know that this person is going to let you down in this particular way over and over and over again, you're still shocked. What? He did that? Or even though I know that I'm not going to walk up the stairs when I have the elevator, and I always want myself to, I'm still shocked. What? You didn't do that? And you wrote it in your journal? And I don't say, well, that's something I can't trust about myself. There are many things I can trust, but that one I would have to work with in maybe a different way. So there are those trusting in the wrong way or not being able to trust issues that Doris is pointing out. Christine sent me a wonderful little video, but we decided not to play it for you because it might give you the wrong message. Would you describe it for us, Christine?
Oh, well, my ex-husband's father was like, Mr. Corporate guy, and this was years ago. And he was telling us, oh, we do these great trust exercises where we fall back. This is, we're like, what? I mean, everybody does them. And, you just fall back, you trust all your coworkers to catch you. So when Lynn told me the topic was trust, I found this goofy little video on YouTube. And it was a guy stands in a corporate environment, stands up on a chair, is like, okay, now he's going to fall and we're all going to catch him. But he falls forward instead of falling back. And he's like, just goes on his face. This is stupid.
So graphic. Maybe you could put the link in the chat in case anybody wants to see that.
Okay.
But it says so much, really. Here, the whole environment is set up and the person is trying to learn trust, but they're falling forward rather than backward. And somehow the signals aren't clear about what the trust needs to be, right? How we need to be in relation to the trust. So what do we do when we need to trust and we feel like the other person isn't trustable? I think here that Jean's philosophy is also helpful for me, because I think that as a focusing person, I've learned over and over and over again, infinite times, that if I'm listening in a particular kind of way, if I'm present in a particular kind of way, that life moves forward, that life opens up. I've learned over and over and over again that life processes are trustable. That every, this is something that I quote all the time, every human experience has inherent in it a forward movement. That believing in the life force and in believing in, trusting those little steps of opening in the right conditions. And the right conditions are that focusing attitude of openness. I've learned that getting to know someone or something, to really know it, brings more and more and more trust. I've learned that through being a therapist. And those of you who are helpers that work with people on a regular basis, we learn so much about trust. That we learn to trust people that we could never trust because we're with them and we see that step-by-step opening and how life wants to move forward in all of us, and how to build that trust between us by getting to know that person and getting confidence in what we can trust in them. Can't trust everything, but to build on what we can trust and to have confidence in those small steps of trust as we take small risks. I think that's another thing that I've learned through focusing, is that being on that, what I call the intimate edge of experience, of taking a small risk of trust that we know we can deal with, builds trust, because each time we take a small risk, we're building our confidence. It's not only, I think I said this before, but let me say it again. The trust is a relational thing. It's not only building confidence in the other person, it's not only building confidence in ourselves, but it's building confidence in the us, in my ability to trust and the other's ability to respond to the trust, and the other's ability to trust and my ability to feel confident that I could meet their trust, even if it's coming as a kind of a coming at me in a sideways way, that I'll recognize it and catch the ball. I guess maybe playing ball would be a wonderful analogy of trust and building trust, and learning how to throw the ball and catch the ball, learning what kind of a ball it is. So small steps of trust. Trust in very particular things. Trust in the life force that's there holding us. Trust that we can respond to whatever it is that's surprising us. I think that's a big one, that trust is a kind of expectation. And sometimes we can't relax, have peace of mind, because we have to be on guard in case something unexpected happens. And that larger trust is a trust that we can be okay, even if something unpredictable happens, and that we can trust the person, even though we don't, and learn not to trust that they're going to do something we know they're not going to do, They're not going to meet our needs in a particular way. Trust that we know that. We're not going to be surprised by that. And we could trust the person in a larger way. Trust their basic, I don't want to say goodness because that is opposed to badness. Trust their basic life energy and get to know where that goes and how that goes. Okay, I think that's all I want to say right now about trust. Building trust, getting to know people, having faith in the life force. I know the other thing that I wanted to say is that I think Doris's 4 categories can sort of help us, because any act of trust, any taking a little risk in connectedness can reinforce all 4 strands of trust, because they're all interwoven, especially if we're sort of aware of it. And I'm aware in my family, I couldn't really trust my parents to meet their own needs, to be okay. And so then I had to develop lots of trust in my own needs to meet the needs of other people, which of course makes me a therapist, right? Many of you probably have that same kind of configuration. So I need to learn to trust. For example, if I don't reflect in the group, that somebody else will, that somebody else will take care of the group, parts of the group or aspects of the group process that I'm not seeing, and I'm actively learning to trust that. That's my work. Okay, let's take a breath and just see where you are with all of this. Give you a moment. As this group does, you have a wonderful ability to take what's ever given to you and take it in and make it yours and see what it is for you. To carry it forward in your own way. To know what you disagree with rather as well as what you agree with and what you just think of very differently. I'm ready to hear from you.
Lynn, could you repeat those 4 strains of Dorothy?
Sure.
Just briefly, thank you.
Trust that the other person can meet my needs. Trust that I can meet the other person's needs. Trust that I can meet my own needs, and trust that they can meet their own needs.
Thank you.
When I say trust that I can meet my needs, I don't mean me alone. Maybe I meet my own needs by calling up a friend or by writing something down or looking something up. I don't know. It's not, I'm resourceful in meeting my own needs, and the other person that I'm trusting or group that I'm trusting can meet their own needs in a resourceful way also.
Then, but if they can't really, and say a friend who doesn't really have that capacity, I think there's something about learning to trust that, or knowing that they can't do that.
Yes.
And when you feel that you are, it may be getting overextended, noticing that and needing, maybe finding ways of stepping back, or because that's often the case when it's lopsided.
Yes, exactly. Yes. trusting that you know that the other person can't do that, at least in the moment, and trusting that you know that you can't do more than you can do. Sort of making a larger trust, given those elements that you know you can trust. I would think of it, I don't think this is a good word, but I think of it as negative trust. You know, that you trust that the person can't do this, right? Or that you can't do this. And it's like making a way of connectivity, of forward movement, given that the others or the other or you can't do this or that.
Yeah, it's like talking about accepting somebody else's limitations and trusting in that, and not overly personalizing if they have these limitations, and doesn't mean it's about me, you know, it's something within themselves.
Yes, yes. And that, I can't see who's speaking.
Lenore?
Lenore, okay. The picture is very small on my screen right now. Yeah, Lenore, that's right. I loved what you said about personalizing. We make, instead of taking risks to trust more, to build trust, we make it a test. And it's often a test of my own worthiness. You know, if this person lets me down, then there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me that I have this, you know, this society, this lover, this friend, this group that lets me down, and then it reinforces some inner trial that I'm having constantly about, am I okay or not? And that's such a big part of trust, is recognizing that that breaking trust, or that another person not being able to meet your needs doesn't mean that that's evidence against you.
Or against them sometimes. Like, I have a friend who is used to call me and on the phone, a very good friend, and she went to a senior living, and never called me. So I was the one who always had to call her, and I struggled with that. I felt first, oh, we don't have the friendship, you know, the caring that we used to have. And then I thought, and it, you know, she was really overwhelmed with this totally new life. And it took me a while to let that in, realize that this wasn't a comment on our friendship or on her lack of trustworthiness. Really took several months.
Yes. Such a good point, Susan. And I think that if we're thinking about how to build trust, one of the elements would be that it's always more complicated than we think. That we may feel a broken trust, or we may feel let down. But we know that it's always more complicated, and trust that it's always more complicated than we know.
And trust that it might change, that how it is now isn't how it will always be, that there's a larger frame. Whatever it is.
Exactly. Trust isn't something that either you have it or you don't have it, or that the person is trustable or they're not trustable. It's an experience. and it changes moment to moment. And we can see that when we're listening to people in a listening, focusing kind of way, or in our group, how the whole us changes. The trust can change moment to moment. Yes.
Yeah, and I would say sometimes trust has to be broken to be mended.
Oh, what a beautiful. I love that. Trust has to be broken to be mended. Wow. Maybe you should put that in the chat for us.
Okay.
There's been a lot of research that has shown that I'm not one that quotes research, so don't ask me where you find the reference. But there's research that shows that ruptures and repair are so important in building new neural pathways in the brain, and that the repair of broken trust is more growth producing than if trust is never broken.
I guess the question is, how do you get to the path of repair? Because sometimes one side is open to repair and the other is closed. And so you're at kind of a barrier or a wall or something that keeps the distance or the relationship or the trust at a complete standstill.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's a difficult place as to where do you go from there? I mean, if the other is unwilling to be receptive, then I guess, you know, for me, it's a turning back to oneself, just trusting that you did what you could and that there's no other movement from the other side. It has to be a duet. It's like a dance. It has to be both people are willing to move in some way that allows them to move together. That the dance becomes synchronized. But if one is doing the mambo and the other is doing salsa, it's really tough.
Uh-huh.
But
Yes. My yes.
You know, it's about, okay, I can survive without this relationship or without mending this. It's a sad thing, but you have to come to a place of, I'm okay without this.
I'm thinking that this is so central, this issue. You know, what if the other person doesn't do the same dance as you? What if they don't want to repair in the way you want to repair? And that it reminds me of what we sort of started with, of this kind of paradox of trust is something between us that's relational, and yet trust is something that I can build, and I can build it even without the cooperation of the other, because I'm trusting this larger thing. I think of, and I've quoted this, you know, many times, I think, in this group, of Gene saying to the client who is sort of attacking him, he's saying, "We're like this right now." And that so says so much to me. I'm doing this dance, you're doing this dance, we're like this right now. But that's making the us. It's not doing without the other person, but just our relationship is like this right now, or our relationship is like this right now, or our relationship is like this right now. it's trust that there's still a relationship even when the other person isn't available to repair, or is feeling us as the enemy or something.
There's also something connected to that, I feel, which is, I often feel resentful about being trusted to do or be something. I would like sometimes just to be trusted in myself, and that whatever I do or am in a situation isn't necessarily what they might want at that point, and they might be resentful. And I hope I can do that for other people, that, that at some point there's, okay, you don't always have to show up in that particular way.
Mhm.
Really not, I don't want to do, was it to trust? What do you mean when you say you trust or you don't trust me? Trust me to do or to be something, or what? There's something about that.
Yes, that you want to be trusted in that larger way of trusting you. I find it very moving when in a movie or in life or in a song. I was looking up songs that had this. Someone will say, "I believe in you." Somehow I find that so touching. I believe in you. It doesn't mean I believe that you're going to do this, this, and this, or that you are this, this, and this, but I believe in you. And that's what you want, Leslie, right? That larger confidence in who you are.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I came up with the formula about trust. I trust that I will not hurt myself, even if you push me.
I'm going to take your formula and just go a little further with it for myself. And I think I would say, I trust that I will be aware not to hurt myself, even when you push me. But if I do hurt myself, I'll forgive myself and get back on track.
I believe that who hurts me is me, really. The other person or the circumstance cannot actually hurt. I do hurt myself every time, in fact. But many things push my buttons or push me,
Yes, yes.
So this is the way of trusting in my consciousness
Yes.
of not hurting myself.
Yes, 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 yes.
I think that brings up for me the need to trust myself as we're talking, and as Leslie said, the whole idea of wanting the other person to trust that I'm who I am and trustworthy. I just find it always comes back to, okay, trust yourself that you're really want the best for the other, because I'm so easily thrown off if somebody isn't trusting me. And then I become that person's belief in me, as opposed to, wait a minute, what's my belief in me?
Right, right, right. Right. Yeah. And that we aren't separate. It's not like my trusting and myself not to hurt myself, or trusting in me rather than you. It's all interconnected there. So when we're trusting ourselves, we're also trusting in the connectivity of our relational beings. Oh, this has been is a wonderful discussion, and I want to give you an opportunity to continue it in the breakout rooms. And so let's
In essence, we saw how we could foster autonomy in others and in ourselves. And we recognize patterns of trying to make amends or trying to, and then realizing that we could work with the patterns and that we have been working with the patterns. So we found instances from the past days and hours.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. You were sort of doing it, you felt like you were making something together.
In my group, there was such a deep listening and sensitivity to each other's moods. That's what has stayed with me, not so much content.
Mhm. Yes, yes, it really always goes beyond the words, right? Beyond the content. It's the felt sense of listening, of attentiveness, of moods.
Yeah. Uh, how can I say, a reaching out to each other too in little words. I'm wondering if, the other members of other 3 people in my group, what you all experienced, if it was anything of what I did.
I was in that, and I'm really very, very grateful. There was a lot of warmth in the mutual experience, and I'm so happy I spoke, because my initial motion was to stay inside, but I chose to participate in this big, the whole meetup today, and also in the small group was my choice, and I'm grateful. Was
So
deep-
glad that you did.
Grateful.
I also was in the group, and it was very tender, and I felt very heard. I've been processing something for a while, and it was the right form to be able to try and put it into a shape. We had 4, which is always a little different instead of 3. But we made it work.
Good.
I was in that group too. It was it felt like we could share our darkness today, a little dark spot around trust. Be with that and trust that was okay. And it was okay.
Those dark spots really do, there's a little risk to be with the dark spots, and then that builds trust. I feel, as the members of your group are talking, how the trust was built in those 20 minutes. It's amazing what 20 minutes will do in focusing time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Our group, we spoke about finding a peaceful core, and how when we do find our peaceful core, we can let more love in to ourselves and others, and develop trust at the same time. But we need to access that peaceful core.
Yeah.
And one person described it as when she was floating on the water on her back, she found that peaceful core. And how it opened
Actually,
up a space.
Actually, that's my image for trust is I'm not a good swimmer. And I had an experience of floating on my back in the ocean and my partner watching over me to make sure I wasn't carried away by a wave. And that image has always stayed with me of trust, that I could just lean back and trust the ocean. The peaceful core. It's not an isolated core, it's a core in relation.
There is this movie called Moonlight,
Mm.
and the older man holds the young boy in the ocean. And it seems to me it's exactly the kind of experience you talk about. Just beautiful. If anybody wants a movie
Oh, I do.
called
I'm a
Into
collector of
Moonlight.
movies.
Yeah, Moonlight.
Yeah, I would love it if we shared movies that help us build trust and confidence in life. Thank you, Sue.
Sure. Jim, is that the right name?
Moonlight?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think it is. I've heard of that movie. Okay, I think we're ready for Dorothy's poem.
It's a movie called Moonlight, and it's on Prime.
Great.
Yeah.
Maybe we should all watch that movie this week.
That's a great idea. The poem I found a snippet of, and I will get you the name and send it to you next week. But this is what I found, a David White poem, a piece of it from The House of Belonging. And here goes. So may we in this life trust to those elements we have yet to see or imagine, and look for the true shape of our own self by forming it well to the great intangibles about us.
Would you read it one more time, Dorothy?
Sure. So may we in this life trust to those elements we have yet to see or imagine, and look for the true shape of our own self by forming it well to the great intangibles about us.
It's beautiful. And I think that goes so well with our theme today. So thank you all very much for helping me to reflect on trust. And we'll see you next week.